And welcome to another edition of the Bow Wow Bill live stream. As always, bear with me for just a moment as I go to my page here, the Bow Wow Bill page, and I'm going to share this on my personal page and then share it in a couple dog training groups as well. I got the man himself, the Alabama dog trainer, Brad Strickland, joining us, my good friend.
Hi, guys.
And Brad is out of Alabama, if you guys couldn't have guessed.
Right.
And, Brad, why don't you do a quick introduction while I do some shares here?
All right. Very good. Well, my name is Brad Strickland, and I am the Alabama dog trainer. I train out of Birmingham, Alabama. Gosh, I've been working with dogs since I was a little boy. I've always had dogs, and not just had my own dogs, but I was the weird kid in the neighborhood that always had the dogs following them around, and family and friends always asking. And so I got started in a rescue in 2001 and started taking on their troubled cases. Like, well, this dog's going to be euthanized tomorrow unless. And most of those were biting, fighting, human aggression, dog aggression, some really nasty stuff. So I kind of cut my teeth in that arena. And of course, I had the fearful dogs and the injured dogs and all those guys too. And one day I was working with a friend and just sort of helping her with her pit bull. And she says, you really should charge people for this. And I thought, who's going to pay? Because I had this vision of what dog trainers were supposed to be, the dogs, glued to your side and looking. I didn't do that kind of stuff. I solved behavioral issues. And I thought about it and I didn't like my job. I was in telecommunications, like in an office wearing a tie and all that jazz. And I didn't like it. And so I thought, well, the next person that calls me, I'm going to charge them. Let's just see. And so they called up and I said, yeah, it'll cost you this much and I'll be out there about an hour. And they said, that's great. When you come. And it was like that. Bing, that light bulb went off. I said, well, look, I can do something that I love and I can make a living at it. And it's actually something that's fulfilling. Because to me, it's never been about making money, so to speak. It's a business, so I have to make a living. I have to feed myself. But to me, dog training is a great way for me to enter into people's homes and help them sort out problems in their lives. Right? Because, Bill, like I do, when we have trouble with these dogs, right, and you go into the home, it's very rarely about the dog, right? You put a leash on them, get some tools and cookies, and next thing you know, the dog's doing what we want them to do. But the home's not set up in a way that allows that to either continue or there's all kinds of troubles going on, trouble with the husband and the wife or whatever it is. And I've found over the years that I am more of a counselor or a psychologist or whatever than I am a dog trainer in most of those cases. And so over the years, I've found great fulfillment in that, right? And I think that's something that's unique to us, Bill. I think it's something that we should honor. Absolutely. And that we should try our damnedest to live up to. Because it's not about teaching a dog to sit. It's about making a home peaceful again. And we do it through dogs. And that's fantastic, man.
You can swear if you want, but I don't think you will.
Well, I am in the South. So any of my Southern viewers, they said, did you hear what come out of his mouth?
I bet, man. And I mean, what a powerful way to start off this conversation. That's why I wanted you to come on here and chat with you, man, because I remember meeting you back in 2010 and geez, it's just what a unique perspective, but what a powerful position that you have. And you're absolutely right. I see this, when you go into a house that, the dog's behavior, especially one little part of the dog's behavior that they want to fix, a lot of times is just a symptom to an overall problem. And just working with that one behavior, sometimes it's just kind of striking the leaves or instead of getting to the root of the problem.
That's right.
And so how do you start that conversation? How do you open up that dialogue that makes your clients realize that it might be bigger, or that this dog is a outcome of the family unit, or the disarray of that house, or whatever's going on?
Yeah. That's actually a tough row to hoe, right? Because
Right.
if you see that it's some sort of a marital strife, you can't just say, "So you're having trouble with your marriage?" You know what I mean? You can't.
Yeah.
So what I always like to do is I like to try to talk to them about how the dogs see and go through life. And so, like, for example, and there's many examples, but for example, I always tell people, so, when you walk into a room and the energy is really exciting, you'll use a term like the energy in the room was electric. Or if the tension is really high, you'll say, well, you can cut it with a knife. And so, well, the reason that we use tactile ways of describing it is because you literally can feel it, right?
Mm.
And I like to think that, or I like to explain to my owners that a good way for them to think about it is their dog goes through every day like that. So they don't need that overwhelming sense to get that tactile response. They just feel it all the time. And so then I can start, when they're like this, perhaps, was there a big change in the house recently? Did you get new furniture? And we start with something mild. Did you get new furniture? Did you redecorate? Right? Did your son go off to college? Whatever it is. And I find that if you're charming and you're caring, you know what I mean? You approach it from a sense of empathy.
Well, and if you're being for real too, because it's not just an act. You really do care about these people, and you feel something, and you gotta talk about it.
So always
Hey,
tell
my Uncle Johnny just said hello from Jersey, so I got to say hey to Uncle Johnny real quick.
Hey, Jersey.
So yeah, I mean, you talk about, and everything that you're saying is something that you deal with a lot of times when they're an empty nester, or they just moved and the dog's acting out because they haven't had time to adjust to this new environment, or whatever's going on in that house. Maybe some trauma, maybe missing dynamic. There's lots of things that influence, and sometimes it's very valuable to know this as a dog trainer, because we're looking for patterns here, and we're kind of looking where things kind of went off into the ditch, and finding out how we can right the path. And so they are very important questions. It's not just about being nosy, and in fact, you do care, right?
Well, and I think it's important for us to study human psychology and behavior, right? So that you can begin. I'll give you an example. I was in a home recently, and there's a whole family was there, right? And this family runs a park together, and so it's the husband and wife and the daughter and her husband, and there's a whole group of them there. And the dogs tended to pick on her a little bit, right?
Okay.
And not in a bad way. She wouldn't listen to her. She would run her over, just all that kind of stuff that we typically see. Sweet dog picks on her, though. And as the conversation is going on, at one point I focused directly on her, right? So I zone everybody and I focus right on her so that we can have a solid conversation. And it's funny because the husband sort of and slid himself in front of, me and her, blocked us. Right, as if he was going to step in and help her, right? And I can understand him wanting to be chivalrous, because he felt like, well, why are you honing in on her? But no wonder she feels weak and small, because anytime something is brought up, instead of him moving in and standing behind her, to me that's a supportive thing,
right?
And helping her to move forward. Anytime she gets challenged like that, he steps in and shuts it off.
He tries to handle it for her instead of letting her learn principles through successes and failures on her own.
Exactly. And what was interesting is another little dynamic that pops up, and I hate to talk about clients, but there's another little dynamic that popped up, is he then began to challenge my authority over the course of the next few minutes. right? So he was almost like that petulant child that starts challenging the teacher no matter what he says.
Right.
Yeah. And so it was interesting because you have to then turn your focus to them and shut it down and keep the conversation moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, and some of these dynamics are unhealthy, and some of you get enabling type of relationships that kind of fuel themselves, and just calling it out is kind of throwing little fuel on that fire sometimes, right?
It can be. And it's funny when you watch all the looks go around the room, like, did he just say that? But I often will tell folks up front, let me say some things, let me be the one to challenge your husband or your wife on, because I leave,
and that's what you're paying me for, is like, look, I'm here. I represent this animal, and you're paying me good money. So I might as well tell you what you paid me to hear. And it might, it might not feel good to hear this, but this is my honest assessment of what's going on here, and let's get into it.
Right. Well, again, like I say, I like to think of our profession in terms of more being a teacher or a preacher or a psychologist or something like that. And, those are tough topics for people to get into, just in general. And so, isn't it funny how conversations go? We start talking about dog training, now we're talking about how people's lives go askew in their own homes. But so much of what we do is tied to that. So I think it's an important topic to cover.
Well, it's a product of that relationship, and that's what we are paid for as professionals. And with that comes an integrity that we really have to, say it as it is, and the patterns that we see over and over and over again. And really quick, we got Jolie from Idaho sending love, and then we have Tosh all the way from New Zealand saying hi, Brad, hi, Bill. And anybody, if you have any questions for Brad or I, go ahead and type them in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to share this video as well, so we get as many viewers as possible, get this information spread far and wide. And a lot of people, they don't realize this aspect of how much it has to do with the human dynamic when they're working with dogs. And a lot of times I hear from trainers, especially new ones, that are like, I don't really like working with humans. That's why I work with dogs, excuse me. And I have to let them know sometimes they're in for a rude awakening, because you're going to be working primarily with humans, because unless you work with them and get this solved, the dog is going to resort back to the old behavior. This is not going to, the dog is going to respond according to that environment. And we have to make an overall change. And that's what we're talking about striking at the root of the problem instead of just a symptom or the leaves.
Yeah. And it'll change almost immediately, won't it? Right. Almost immediately when the dog goes back into the home, it's all the old stuff right over again, And I think it's interesting because, people tend to limit their ability. Okay. So in other words, they don't believe that they're capable of some of the things that they're actually capable of. Right. And I tell them, so look, they're going to know the rules at my place, and they're going to know the rules at your place. And when they get home, they're going to say, oh, yeah, I remember the rules here.
It's a sucker.
And they're going to do all those things. And it's interesting because, my dogs at my home, of course, they're allowed up on the furniture. As you see, she stuck her face in.
Mine too.
I don't care. That's fine.
It's a dog house.
But when they go to my parents' house, they're not allowed up there. Right. And they know the rules. When they go over there, they don't get on the furniture over there. When they come home, they pile up in the bed and get under the covers, all the things. So they know the rules. They're capable of discerning where they are and what the rules are. And I think it's important for owners to understand that when they come home, it's not like you sent me your car to put brakes on it. You know what I mean? I bring you your car back when you brakes on it, and you just keep driving the way you drive. And then when the brakes go bad again, well, I just bring it on back. It's a live animal. It doesn't work like that. You know?
Yeah, it's not a push button, and we belong to a world where we have these boxes in our pockets that provide us instant gratification at literally a push of a button, and we kind of wire our brain. It switches the way we think about stuff, and I have to remind people, look, Sometimes my favorite thing to say is, slow is fast when we're working with behavior, right? Less is more, right? We have to just take these things and be focused and be present 100% with that animal. Don't get distracted by these electronic leashes that we have. And
I think you brought up a good point too, right there, Bill. In that train of thought, that oftentimes when I'm talking to trainers, whether they're young trainers or old trainers, but generally the younger trainers, the answer to behavioral issues becomes train, train, train.
Mm.
And I can understand where they're coming from with that, where training can build confidence and but I oftentimes think they push that too far. Whereas if they would just learn to just let the dog be for a little while, do just a little bit, let's get comfortable, then we'll start doing these other things. Yes. And to your point, things go much faster, right? Slow becomes fast, and the dog is, because, you see them, they'll go hold a sit, but they're still, well-eyed and I'm not real comfortable with this whole situation, but they're holding their sit.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not fun for Fido,
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that we work on the brain as well as working on where the body is.
Yeah. Well, and be realistic, and not only that, but, we have to be able to trust our dog. And that's what I tell people. We have to be able to see that this dog discerns and that this dog gets it and understands. And the more that I've worked with these animals, like I have my new round of 3 puppies currently. And I mean, it's probably the less I've worked with puppies. I just let them be, let them do their own thing, man. And they're just turning out to be the coolest dogs, and I think that it comes with experience. Knowledge through experience is a lot different. Who's this guy?
That's Eve.
Or who's this girl?
She comes and this is her favorite thing to do. Right, especially if I'm on the phone. She's like, no, it's me. She's a big scary pit bull, right?
Yeah.
Don't let her near your face. Oh,
yeah. No. She's dominating you, Brad.
I know. I ought to be. Look, what a terrible trainer. He shouldn't let them do that. That's what happens when he lets them on the furniture like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. It's like if you have this relationship with your animal, it's an open line of communication, and you get that dog. And you get, one of my dogs, it'd rather be on a cool, hard floor. And if I get him a bed, he gets hot and he runs off that thing, and the other dogs, it's just every one of them is an individual. And, it just goes to what you're saying about how the upkeep might be different too for this dog versus this dog. If I got 2 board and trains with the younger dog, might be a totally different protocol than the older dog.
Absolutely.
And it's also, keeping my clients accountable is a hard thing too, right? Is to keep them. I told one of my clients that, oh geez, you should probably see this too, but I'm not going to name names, that, no walks with your dog. I need this dog. We're doing long line work with this animal, and I just need this dog to kind of get it and get this overall grasp about, like, pay attention to me. Regardless of what's going on in this environment, I need you to pay attention to whoever's holding this leash. And she called me a few days later, man, and she's like, yeah, it happened again. The dog barked and went reactive after another dog. And I was like, what were you doing? and what was she doing?
Exactly what you told her not to.
She was out on a walk with her dog, and I was just like, I just had to say, I didn't say anything, no diatribes or anything like that, because we don't know their life. And that's the other thing that we have to remember too, is like, people are fighting in inward battles that we don't know about, that we can't see. I've seen these households that are just so busy, man, that they're back to back, they're scheduling. I don't know how these people do it. I couldn't. It gives me anxiety just looking at it.
Right.
And
you're in the house, and it's almost draining just being around that heightened state of energy that the household has,
Yeah. And that's just a point in their development as a family unit. They're just at a busy time. Like, all the kids are in soccer or sports, or, that time of year. And it's just what these kids are passionate about, and balancing with that family unit and school and a dog, and the dog sometimes takes the the back seat, and I get it. And so I'm just here to reiterate exactly what they need to do. I'm not here to belittle or to judge, and I do not, let's quick shout out. We got Jason Cohen from Brooklyn in the house. Hey, Brad and Bill. We got Justin from New York as well. Hey, Justin, Padina. And then Amy
Yankees checking in to see what these Southerners do. That makes me feel proud.
Yes. Well, I was wondering too. I was like, hey man, I wonder what I should ask him. And that's what, another thing that we were talking about before we went live here is some of the issues that you might deal with as a Southern dog trainer versus what I would deal with as somebody that lives more in an urban area of Seattle.
Yeah.
And that the issues that I see, I'll just say it. I mean, probably the biggest one is door manners, jumping up on people, barking, losing their mind, ritualistic behavior when they hear, a knock or anything, the trigger of the door. And then probably housebreaking would be up there. And then, I get reactive dogs and quite a bit as well. Yeah. Nothing too crazy. But a lot of times once we get them on the right path, and then we're good to go, and getting them to understand how a dog thinks. Yeah. Would you say that's about the same for you down there? Or?
There's a lot of that. Yeah. But, because we have such a high rate of abandoned dogs, I mean, that's why we're forever shipping them out. All these northern folks, they're getting our dogs all the time, because we've got more than we can handle. And so I end up with a lot of sort of semi-feral dogs that people have adopted, and they get them home and they're just not accustomed to being in a house or with a family or whatever. And so it becomes more primal conversation about, this is why they do it, this is how they think, and here's how we're going to sort of re-domesticate them, and that kind of thing. I mean, we do a lot of training as well, of course, but for the most part, I do. And of course, that's my niche, though, is I take all the dogs that nobody else will.
Good.
So
good for you.
Yeah, and generally, I was having a discussion with my mother just about this today, as a matter of fact. I deal with so much of that, I thought I think I'm almost done with dealing with aggression, and I have a house full of dogs because it's spring break and all this, and they were all outside playing and making noise and growling and doing all those fun things that dogs do.
Yeah,
and I felt this great sort of that those sounds were not accompanied by a fear of a fight breaking out. Because you deal with it so much, right? At some point, everywhere you look, you're seeing flashes of aggression, even though it's not there.
Yeah. And well, you're trying to. It's better. I mean, you're trying to. It's err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
And that's just as it just kind of our mind just starts to automatically go into autopilot, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, you start seeing things that aren't there that, in other words, you're overreacting, And so as we got to talking about it, I thought, well, if I do that, who's going to help these people? Right? If I'm the one that will take the dogs that nobody else in town takes, then what's going to happen to those families? What's going to happen to that dog? And the reason I got to doing this was because I started in a shelter, and I saw all that going on, and I wanted to make sure that I could help them. And then, like I say, somebody said, oh, you should charge. But that was the reason I was doing it, was to help make sure that these dogs didn't end up in a shelter.
Yeah. Well, you saw a void and you stepped in to fill that. And, we got a couple comments here. Tosh says that I find the hardest thing to get through to people at the moment is that dogs are not static creatures. Just because it has never done something before doesn't mean it won't. Yep. And then Jason Cohen just says, oh, yeah, both my dogs are Alabama dogs. He's up in Brooklyn. So.
That's the way it goes. We send them up, man. But, he's right. You hear that comment quite a bit, don't you? You know what I mean? Well, he's never done, or I've never seen. Look, that doesn't mean anything, And just because you saw these behaviors in the past doesn't mean you're going to see them in the future either.
That's right.
As he said, they're non-state. It's a living creature. That to me is the biggest thing for people to get their head around. When it comes to that piece of it, is they're a living, dynamic creature. They're going to change. They're going to. This one was highly reactive when she came in.
Yeah, one of mine was too, man. I should grab one of my girls. That was one of the most aggressive cases I have. She's my amazing grace, I call her. And we got a comment from Palmer Wilkes. Who is this Brad guy? Does he even train dogs?
Yeah, go suck an egg, Palmer. I got one here I'm gonna send you. Clearly, she needs some training.
Yeah, there you go, Palmer. Yeah, I have no clue, right? I assume Palmer's your buddy.
Yeah, he's one of the locals here, and he gets beat up like I do by the purely positives all the time. I think there's one group in town that just loves to just beat us up. They've never seen us train a dog, but they just know everything about us.
Yeah, it's interesting to me.
I share a little of that every now and then.
I've received that as well too, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a huge dynamic rift in the dog training industry between what people refer to as purely positives, people that do not believe in adversives, versus they also have a term called balanced trainers, which I consider myself being in the camp of, which we do use tools, we do use aversive, whatever. I tell people, I've stole this from Sean O'Shea, that I'm not the expert. We have to let that dog be the expert. Yeah. And a lot of these philosophies derived for the purely positive movement are done in an acoustic chamber called a science lab. Yeah. And with a pigeon or a rat. And this isn't a pigeon or a rat.
That's a good point there, Bill, because you brought up the in a lab. They often like to say it's scientific, right? The training's scientific. Well, the same studies that they're citing talked about positive punishment, negative reinforcement.
That's right.
They used all of it.
Yep.
That's how these terms came to be. And yet they love to preach science, but they either are just they're blind to it, or they're ignoring it, or they've never been told,
or they're not letting that dog be the expert.
These dog trainers have actually studied psychology. Yep. and looked at the behaviorists and so forth, and what did they see, what did they study, what did they learn, what did they write about? Another one that gets beat up all the time is dominance hierarchy. Well, that myth's been dispelled. Bull. Everything from lobsters to us has a dominance hierarchy. It's older than us. It's older than trees. Dominance hierarchy has been around forever. But they refuse to look at it. They refuse to hear it, because somewhere along the way, somebody told them that means being a bully and growling and snarling and all this kind of stuff. It's not. It's a preacher. It's a boss. It's a parent. It's a teacher. It's, what do you think that stuff is?
Well, and I think that it doesn't feel good all the time when you have to, and doing what's right doesn't always feel good. I have to tell, people that are on that side, and a lot of times I've seen relationships just get really, really, driven off into the ditch because this dog does not respect this person. They look at him as a sucker. Right. And that's exactly it. They don't think that this dog or this person is going to provide any type of protection or guidance, and the dog is kind of left on their own. And it just has become, I don't know, this interesting dynamic.
Well, it's one of those things that I'll try to break it down into terms of just the average relationship, because in order for a relationship to be healthy, it has to have at least three things, right? You've got to have trust, respect, and fulfillment, right? Mutual fulfillment. And that one's an easy one. That one's selfishness, which is another word that we hate to use these days. But if I'm in a relationship with somebody, my wife brings things to the table that I like. Mm-hmm. And if she didn't bring those things to the table, I would be with someone else. That's me being selfish. That's a good selfish. Nothing wrong with that,
That's right.
And so by that same token, I have to provide those things for her. So that mutual fulfillment thing becomes pretty easy to understand, right? Trust, well, I can feed my dogs and not kick them and, and all those things, and they'll learn to trust me. Just like I'm not going to cheat on or smack or whatever my spouse. She can trust me, But then there's that respect part of it, right? And how do I get respect? Well, I have rules, if you don't come home and be with me and the kids and you're out cavorting around with all your buddies in the bar, mister, there's a consequence for you, right? And because she sticks to those consequences, I have respect for her. And I have those rules for her and she has them for me, and it's back and forth. And because of that, we can
mutual respect.
Right. And so, well, okay, if we understand that in our daily human lives, right? Because most of the people you're going to go in, they're probably either dating or married. And so these things make sense, right? And so from there, it becomes easier to say, okay, well, now how do I get respect out of my dog? Well, they usually give you that look like, oh. So, well, what did we just talk about? How do you get respect from your husband or your wife? You have rules. You set them in place. You stick
communication. That's right.
We have to communicate. We have to have boundaries. We have to have structure. We have to trust one another. We have to fulfill one another. And once they start putting it into terms like that, it becomes a lot easier for them to wrap their head around, because so often respect, rules, boundaries, checking your dog on doing things they're not supposed to do. Somewhere along the way, somebody probably told them that they're abusive if they do that,
Yeah. Or they just feel intuitively that that's wrong, or they don't know how to do it correctly, or the dog isn't listening, or the dog is responding in a fearful manner, right? I hear a lot of times too that, this dog was beaten. And a lot of times I'm pretty sure that's not the case, is because this dog is acting out in a way that they act out naturally, and we kind of have to take that observer role as a professional and know, hey, look, this is part of the process.
Yeah,
we got to keep our eye on the big prize. And just like with confusion, concepts being fused, that's what confusion is, right? And so we have to allow these concepts to be fused. There's going to be that time of confusion with any living being. It's that comfort zone that's being built in a neural network in the brain, and that's what we all have. It's just that these dogs don't have this conscious mind.
It's just different.
Yep. And that conscious mind is sometimes its own animal, because it can convince us of things that like that structure and stuff that doesn't feel good, that it might be wrong, or it could also just be easily manipulated as well. And remember when I got hypnotized, dude?
Yeah, holy cow. And that brings up something interesting, because some people are more susceptible to it than others, right? Some people are very
pick me out, man, every time.
Yeah, that's so funny. And that's such an interesting, because all of that stuff is basically it's not mumbo jumbo, it's psychology.
Yeah.
Reading people, understanding why their minds do what they do, and so forth. And God, if we do that with our industry more, I think we'd accomplish more. I really do.
Well, and I think, that's what we do. And as dog professionals, we can read dogs kind of like that, right? And so one of my favorite things to do is matchmake, where I go help a family go find a dog. And a lot of times it's counterintuitive, right? And we've spoke about this, I think, with Jennifer Hack and who else did we talk? I think Ted Ephthymitis. We chatted about dog selection for kids and families, and it's something that we kind of do as professionals, right? It's something that hypnotist looked at me right away and said, "Hey, look, you're a good candidate," and I could look at a dog and be like, "That's a great candidate for your family. This dog right here. Let me tell you why." Right.
That's it. And the demo he did with James was fantastic, right? Where he put him up there, and James is so hard-faced and stoic, and and he read him like a book, like James wrote down the answers and stuck them in his pocket, and he was able to read him like that, and we can, as trainers, I think it's important for us to develop that skill, right? Like you say, and generally speaking, because we've been doing it as long as we have, and that's pretty much all we do get very good at that, right? But I think it's important for us to have that knowledge and ability with people too, to see them, like I'll go into a home and went to one and it was pretty much a happy-go-lucky dog, not a mean dog, but he bullied the one daughter in the house to no end. And she was a teenage daughter, like 19, so it's not a little girl. And so we get there and we're chatting and she has me come in and they have one of those corner sectional couches. And when we come in to sit down, the dog's nowhere in sight, right? It's nowhere around. It's just me and her and one other person. And she sits in that corner, in that corner and makes herself as small as she can.
My goodness.
Because she was so intimidated by me being there and talking with her, right? And so I thought, well, there's your problem. If every time that dog's around you, as a person, just as an individual, your first inclination is to hide from everything and make yourself as small as possible so you can't be seen. Well, that tells me everything I need to know about why the dog's bullying you. It's not about the dog, it's about you, right? And so then we're doing assertiveness training for the owner, right? Like a psychologist would do, with somebody who's suffering these severe things. You go out and do assertiveness training. And so in essence, that's what we end up having to do with those people,
Yeah. Well, it's that repetition is the mother of learning, but it's also, I don't want to say practice makes perfect, because we were chatting about how sometimes when we practice the wrong things,
you practice. Perfect practice makes perfect, right?
Yes, there we go. Much better. But sometimes you have to see a different form of what's possible too, and that's what I'm there to show the people. And I let them know, hey, look, if I can take in just a few minutes with your dog and have you doing things that you never thought were possible, I said, imagine where this relationship can go with your dog, but take it a step further. And if you realize that you didn't even know that this dog was capable of this, imagine what else is in your life that you don't really know and that you need to reevaluate. And, sometimes it's a big eye-opening experience for these people.
Indeed. Well, one of my very first private lessons, after I decided I was going to do this, and I was still doing it part-time and so forth, I went in and worked with a family. It was a younger married couple, and we go through the routine. We go through the process. They had 2 outrageous, out of control poodles. I mean, these were working dogs through and through, right? They just needed direction and guidance, but fantastic dogs. And in between maybe the first and second visit or second and third visit, I don't remember, the husband had come home with a young German Shepherd puppy. And through this high drive, wild, GSD into this already chaotic and out of control poodle situation, right? And so instead of things getting better, it was getting worse.
Right.
So we talked about it, 2 or 3 lessons, and everything seems to be going very well. Oh my goodness. See, when the dog enters in, the conversation just goes.
Yeah.
But
my girl.
Over about 6 months, I get a call. Right, I hadn't heard from this family, and she just, hey, this is so and so. Just wanted to call and give you an update. It's good to talk to you. What's going on? Tell me about what's going on. She said, well, I just wanted to let you know that I got a divorce, and it's all because of you. That's exactly. I went, oh shit.
Right? Dude, what a phone
what
call.
What am I fixing to catch, right? What is this woman fixing to say to me? And it was probably that much time in between her saying that and the next thing that came out of her mouth. But of course, it sounded like this long minutes worth of, while I'm waiting, jaw drop for her to say it. And the next thing out of her mouth was, and I just wanted to call and say thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, because over the course of the training, She learned how to stand up for herself.
Mm.
And he wasn't taking responsibility and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Just there for the dogs. Right.
Yeah.
That's what she tells me, and she decided she was going to stand up for herself and demand more. And he wouldn't do it. And she was so ecstatic that she was able to make these great life changes because of working with her dog, Yeah. And so I think that touches to your point that you don't really know what's possible until you get out there and get at it,
Well, and there's strength. There's strength in this struggle, man. There's strength. And I mean, it's weird, but 85% of my clients sometimes are women, right? And so it's a big majority of who I work with. And a lot of times it's finding whatever's going to tap into that mama bear.
Yeah.
And the power that they have within there. And then once we've done that and make them see this relationship in that type of light, then I'm like, I'm out of here. The good luck with your life, because you're headed places, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of my clients when they realize their own strength, because a lot of times I see strength big time within them, and it's just, it needs to be uncovered. And a lot of times I think that we get the dogs that we need, not the dogs necessarily that we want, that help us learn. And I tell them the dogs, just like Patrick says, we got Patrick Walsh. Hey, Patrick, fun discussion, guys. Yep. Generally speaking, the dog is just responding naturally to his people who are generally nuts.
True.
Right. And so
we all are a little bit, right?
Yeah. I am too. I'm not. We all got a little bit of the nutty, and that's it. Is sometimes things need to change, and it's sometimes that bifurcation of realizing being pushed over from the relationship with your dog, and then reevaluating your relationships and seeing where else you're being pushed around, or who's not ready to come to do the real work. Right. Who doesn't care. And then you find out who doesn't care. And sometimes that can be detrimental to a relationship when you see that somebody that you love does not have the strength that you thought that they had, or the capabilities that you thought that they had.
This is another big one that I think happens a lot, and it happens just in life in general, but because of the nature of what we do, we see it. Because someone is taking a more assertive role in their own life, right? So in other words, they're making the effort to clean up their bedroom a little bit every day. The person down the hall, again, so to speak, says, "What makes you think you're better than us?" Right? And so that dynamic plays into a lot of that, and I think that happens just in general, right? Because cleaning up your own backyard is hard, right? So much of what we do in the world that we live in is like a microcosm for society at large. I really believe that, as far as like the tribalism that we see. We've been dealing with tribalism between, the purely positive and the assertive or the aversive, and we've been seeing that for decades now, right? I mean, it's not something new. I remember starting at the ICP and having that discussion, 10 years ago, So that's still there. And then purely positive, don't say boo to your dog. It's everything's got to be rewards and bribes. Well, we've also been at the grocery store and seen that kid running up and down the aisle screaming and acting a fool, and her mama's chasing him around going, "If you'll stop, I'll buy you." Bull. That's not how that works. You want him to keep running around and aggravating everybody? Keep doing what you're doing. What do we see in dog training? So much of it is very akin to life on a larger scale, But I think that's one of the unique things that we do, to sort of touch back, we were talking about earlier. It gives us that unique opportunity to step in and try to show them something different, right? How many times have you been in a home, Bill, where the dog was trouble, you get in there and the kids are out of control too?
Oh, man. I remember one time that these 3 kids, I just had enough, dude. And I was just like, look. And the mom's sitting right there. I'm talking to the mom, and I can't even have this conversation with the mom. And
Right.
so I look at the kids and I'm like, look, kids, you three over here, sit down on this couch, listen, and be quiet.
Right.
And man, I'd turn around and they'd listen. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I was like, do you see what I just did to your kids? That's
Right.
what you need to do to your dog.
It's great, right? Because they look at each other like, did he just talk to our kids like that? And then after they sit down and start listening, then they look at each other like, that just work? You know?
Yeah, man.
It did.
I remember that because I was like, I was kind of feeling like, oh crap, did I just overstep my bounds? But I just had enough, dude. It just reached that point that either these kids were going to shut up and sit down and listen, or I was going to leave. And because we
Right.
couldn't, it wasn't, it was a exercise in futility. It wasn't accomplishing anything.
No, but you told the truth.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's, we talked about it a little bit ago. That's so important that if you choose your words correctly, right, you can't just say, you little bastards, what's wrong with y'all? Can't you control your damn kid? You can't do that. All right. So as long as you can control your words, choose your words wisely, and tell the truth, things will generally work out. Might be hard, but they'll generally work out if you just choose your words and tell the truth.
Yeah,
and then take the hit for it.
And pick your battles too. I know that that was it. Either I'm leaving or these kids. That's what happened. Like it just hit that point.
Yeah.
But it's also those kids saw their parents coming to me for guidance, and maybe I don't know what happened, but and not only that, but I was projecting a very assertive energy. Like this stops now. Like I'm done. Either this situation is going to switch here, or I'm going to switch it by leaving.
Right. And the interesting thing is the kids love it when you provide them with that assertive structure. Oftentimes just like the dogs, right? When the dogs are, and we've gotten the comments about it, right? When the dogs are acting out, it's because of kids are the same way. They're saying, give me structure.
Yeah.
Give me this, because otherwise, Chuck E. Cheese, what I mean? And that's what
they're looking for, where the boundaries lie. And if they don't find any boundaries, they're going to keep on looking for them, man. And that's it. We need to find no, dude, this stops right here. Yeah. Like, you want to be over here? That's great. You're not going to be over here. Okay, because it stops right here.
Exactly.
So, there's not an option here. I'm going to make this very simple for you. And that's the other thing with the kids too, is like, we make this very simple. It's either do this or do that, and no in between. And
I always tell people, if you sort of read the same stuff that I read and so forth, but have you paying attention to this Jordan Peterson guy?
Oh yeah. 12 Rules for great guy. I like him.
Have you read that book?
Yeah. I haven't read it yet. I got it on my. It's like my second one up. My wife has read it, and she definitely wants to read it again. But let me find it. I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and I enjoy listening to. So his interview on who was it? The fighter guy. Why can't I think of his name?
Joe Rogan.
Who? Joe Rogan. Yeah, Mike. Can I think of
that
Joe
guy's
Rogan?
got a great little deal going on. But he had the other guy, Brett Weinstein, the Evergreen College professor, on too. You want to hear how actual intellectuals have open discussion? By God, listen to that one. Wow, it's good.
It's great.
But that's a tangent. But one of the things that he talks about is he says, never let your kids do something that'll make you not like them. And I love that.
I love it. I love it.
Because it's not to say that you won't love your children. Ryan will always love it. I'll always love my dogs.
It's the act.
Stuff every now and then that makes me not like them.
Yeah.
And so if you allow that behavior to continue, right, resentment builds, and that's when dogs are abandoned or abused, or things get way out of hand or whatever. And the other thing too is, if you don't like their behavior, what the hell do you think everybody else thinks about it? Because you love them.
Yeah.
And if you love them and you're doing something you don't like, boy, they're really driving somebody else nuts.
Well, I love this Jordan Peterson. So the title of his book is 12 Rules for Life. And now it's an antidote to chaos.
Yeah. That is a fantastic book for anyone to read. It's not a self-help, wish it, want it, do it kind of bullshit kind of book, but it is remarkable as far as finding, because I find nuggets of wisdom for what we do, you know, because again, so much of what we do falls almost into the clinical psychology realm, you know. And so I find, you know, great nuggets of wisdom in that stuff.
I like that antidote to chaos, because that's a lot of times what we are. We're coming in and we are introducing, you know, the antithesis of mania and chaos. And like, look, that's what I first think. A lot of times when I'm walking into even my classes, I tell people rule number 1, stay calm.
Right.
You know, rule number 2, stay calm.
Right.
You know, that's it. It's like, you know, we can handle this. If something, Brian Yarborough says, "Hey, Brad, if we or Yarborough.
Yeah, Yarborough. He's one of my old high school buddies.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Facebook's kind of crazy like that. It's like a wrinkle in time, dude. Like when I didn't know where everybody was, I'm like, I hope they're doing good. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, now I know where everybody is and everything about them. And, you know, in some aspects it's wonderful. In some aspects it's can be a little bit distracting. And but
for sure, it can turn into an echo chamber. You know, for sure.
Yeah.
Most social media does. But, you know, I think that's one of the cool things about our world, right, is we have so many different people, just different people, you know, whether they're different races, backgrounds, country,
all over the world,
origin,
man.
You name it, right? It's all over the spectrum, and it forces you to have an open mind. I think, or it does me. I'm sure a lot of people it doesn't, you know, obviously.
I think it's your approach, you know, if your approach to this and your motivation to get into this too. If this is something that you're motivated strictly by money, or if something that you were born into, then it might not be as the same as if you had an intrinsic desire. Brad, a car guy as well. Brad's car guy as well. Brian, if you need a car guy, and you're in Alabama, call Brian. But you know, it's that motive that made these people start it. And I see that, you know, if you're really passionate about these animals, and this is an intrinsic, intuitive nudge that you've had your whole life, and that is a totally different type of motive than if you were born into, or if you're just solely for money, or if it's just the only job that you have, or and I think that passion, and we were chatting about this earlier, because you just started crafting knives, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us are artists, and not just artists, but really good artists with some amazing, not just talents, but amazing art, amazing medium that we work with. Myself, I do glass. A lot of people don't realize I have my glass studio right out here, and a lot of it, we were chatting about this with how we approach dog training. It's very similar to how we approach the art. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah. Well, I think that in a lot of ways you're revealing the dog underneath, right? So what we do from a training point of view. And so the reason I started crafting knives was, I've always worked with my hands. You know, before I got into dog training and before I had my little suit and tie job, I was a manual labor guy. So I was always working with my hands, working on cars, things like that. And so when I looked to find something else to do, I wanted something like that, right? I also make homemade mead, right? So you find these fun little things, and to me, it's more about the learning. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, and so half the fun is screwing up and coming.
It's a journey, not necessarily the destination, right?
But you know, you start with that blank piece of steel, and you know what it is that you want to get onto that steel, but you're not real sure how to get there. You start taking steps, and crap, I cut that wrong, or geez, that grind mark went the wrong way, or whatever. But you don't chuck that piece of steel out and start again. You just keep working it and keep working it. And before you know it, even though it looked like shit, You think, God, this is horrid, you know, and I've cut myself on all these jagged edges and blah, blah, blah. Or I burned myself with a torch the other night, burned my fingers. Like, damn, I cooked myself. But that's part of it, because if you keep through that process, keep through the banging your fingers and, you know, messing up and all of that, you begin to reveal, right, that piece of art that's underneath, right? Just like what you're doing with the glass. It's not just a piece of melted sand, right? It becomes something, right?
Yeah.
And so I always try to talk to my clients about that too. What do you want your dog to be, right? Well, then help it to become that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wanna hunt with your dog? Fine. Help him become a hunter.
You said earlier when we were chatting, see your dog as a canvas, and you know, the Tranquil versus a storm is what I wrote down.
Yeah. I use Bob Ross a lot, you know, and I don't know if everybody remembers Bob Ross with the big afro and the happy little trees, right? PBS painting. But those shows were pretty well live. What he did on that was right there. There was no, I have this one sitting over here so I can stick it in and make it look pretty. He didn't do any of that, right? And along the way, he messed up. That was, again, it was one of the best parts about that show, or some of the other ones like it, is he screwed up in front of everyone, and that's okay. We keep working towards the image that we want. And for Bob Ross, he always had these tranquil little scenes, right? So it's a little cabin and a pretty stream and some trees and maybe a mountain, right? And if he saw a storm, right, thunder, lightning, all of this, well, that's what would end up on the canvas, right? But if he kept that image in his mind of what it is that he wanted, and then messed up, he just says, oh, well, that'll be a happy little tree. He didn't just throw the canvas out, right? And so if we're working with our dogs and we see them pulling, right? We see a storm. We see them pulling, gnashing at their teeth, lunging at other animals, whatever it is, whatever that story is for them.
I love it.
If that's all they see, then that's the book they're going to read. That's the story they're going to get. That's the image on the canvas. But they can hold on to the image of the good. And then when the dog lunges or pulls or whatever, oops, that's a happy little tree. We offer a correction of some sort, and it becomes a happy little rock or a little tree. And by God, we keep working towards that image, you know. It's almost like remember those old choose your own adventure books?
Yeah.
Right?
I'd read them, and then I'd read back, and then I'd read them, you know.
Yeah.
You'd want it to last forever, you know.
You know. But that's it. You can either have that storm or you can have that peaceful image. Doesn't mean you don't have to work for it.
That's right.
You always have to work for it. You know, the struggle. What is it that people are telling children these days? Follow your dream, follow your truth.
You can be anything you want.
Follow your bliss, right? Well, frankly, in order to get your bliss, you have to follow your purpose. You have to find your purpose, and that's hard. Yeah. That means you got to work. That means you got to put in the time. That means you got to fail.
Well, and you have to find out what your purpose isn't, and that's what that fail is, dude.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. And through that, you find the bliss, you know?
Yeah. You're like, dude, that's not what I'm doing.
Right. That's it. Those are your moments to say, you know. And I also talk to my owners a lot about, oh, you know, down the road, there's that dog behind that fence or on that street corner that always makes my dog react. Mm. And so they always go in the other direction. Mm. I tell them, no, go for that. Yeah. Right. And sort of go back to it. That's another one of those little things that Jordan Peterson talks about. He says, if you feel that fear of doing something, or that hesitation, or that urge to procrastinate, that is your body, that's your mind telling you that's the thing you need to go do, because that's what's going to help you move forward. Right. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, I'm scared of alligators, I'm going to go wrestle a damn alligator. That's not what I mean, obviously. But, you know, did you call that client that was a little perturbed? Did you call them back? Because that's a hard call to make. Yeah. But you need to. And by God, you got to do it. I'm afraid to do it. Well, do it. well, I don't know if I want to teach this group class because then I got to stand up in front of a whole bunch of people and be judged. Do it.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do because it makes you afraid.
That's right.
I don't want to do public speaking. Do it. Fail, be afraid, screw up, skin your damn knees. That's what life is about, because that's how you find your happiness after. And that's how you fix your dog. That's how you fix your children. That's how you fix your life. It's all the same.
Patrick says, yep, go looking for trouble.
Exactly. Right?
Well, I mean, I know that, these doubts, fears, anxieties are basically, that's where your comfort zone, that's the edge of your comfort zone.
That's right.
Your body, your mind has a couple different purposes. The first purpose is to keep your body functioning correctly. So your heartbeat, your core temperature, all these functions that we have, from the circulatory to digestive, all these things that are going as we speak right now, and that I'm just not aware of, thankfully.
Right.
Freaking sure. But that's our subconscious mind. But then we also have to realize that we have an amygdala, which is an almond-shaped gland in our brain that is kind of like our pharmaceutical company, or a lot of people call it your fear factory. Right. And when we feel these doubts, fears, anxieties, that's what it is that this amygdala is pumping out polypeptides that lock into our cells like a key into a lock, and then that's what causes that reaction. And we have to feel that, and we have to acknowledge it, and we move forward knowing that we're headed towards a bigger, better outcome, and that we're bursting through that comfort zone. We're breaking out of that box, right. Breaking out of that cage. And sometimes it's going to take constant awareness, because you're walking with purpose, and you are headed somewhere, and you're keeping your eye on that big prize. Yeah. And we have to realize that because this brain function is present also in these animals, they're going to feel the same when we start challenging them and challenging their comfort zones as well. And that's what's valuable about working with a professional. But it's not what happens to us. That's the overall takeaway from this, is that it's not what happens to you, but how we respond to it.
That's right.
And
everybody's got problems. Everybody. Yeah. Everybody is oppressed, has a problem, can't do it. Everyone. Guess what? That's what life's about.
That's right.
And you have to figure out a way to pick your damn self up and keep climbing that hill, because that is the purpose. You know what I mean? Wherever that hill that is for you, but that's the purpose of life, is to get hit in the face and get back up.
Fail harder.
Yeah, that's it. It's one of those interesting things that if you shelter your child, if you shelter your dog, from the malevolence that is out there in the world, well, eventually it's going to come back with a vengeance as a great big dragon.
Yeah,
and it's gonna peer down on you. But if you face it when it's a tiny little dragon, you get it under control. You learn about those things, and it doesn't come up to bite you in the ass later on. Right? That's the whole bit behind the Snow White story, right? Is they don't invite the evil witch to the christening, and then she comes back later on pissed off because they shunned that part of the world from her to keep her protected. Later on, she comes back and she's the evil dragon and puts the curse, and that's why those stories are so beneficial.
Yeah, they're allegories.
Exactly.
They're allegories. There's
a nugget of wisdom in all of them.
Yep. And that's a bigger story, a bigger truth that can be applied towards a philosophical, outcome of life, or something to look at as a deeper meaning than just the surface. Chrissy says it's how we overcome those obstacles to rise above them. Yep. Well, and I also tell people, a lot of times we can't rise above something. We have to, you can't go under it either, and you can't go around it. The only way is to go through it. And when you go through it, it's just like what Brad does with his metal working, is when you put something into the fire and then quench it, what happens to it?
Oh, it gets harder.
That's right. And
Yeah.
so it's that strength lies within that struggle that took you through that fire.
That's
And
right. That's right. That's the beautiful thing about finding these little outlets, right? Is because again, they reveal nuggets of wisdom, right? Like you say, you throw it in the fire, that's hot. You know what I mean? It's rough and it comes out glowing and almost melted. But in the end, that's
almost
what
destroyed.
makes it strong. You know,
Yeah.
it
Took it to the brink of destruction, and then boom, it came back. Like, you know, and the same thing if you want to talk about allegories. Here we go, dude. The Lord of the Rings, you know, with Gandalf the Grey, you know, he's sitting there on the edge of that cliff, and then he looks up and he realizes that he needs to go because a demon just went down into the abyss, that he needed to face his demons. And so he voluntarily let go of that cliff. Exactly. And then he fell down into the abyss. And then next time we find him, he's no longer Gandalf.
His enemies on the rocks below.
Yeah. Well, it's Gandalf the White, you know, after we find him, because he has gone through and confronted his shadow. And that's that Carl Jung work. And Jordan Peterson talks about Carl Jung and you know, the Gulag of Archipelago, Ordinary Men, you know, 1984, what do we got? Fahrenheit, Catcher in the Rye. There's so many books that he recommends. And
they all have those nuggets in there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. The pearls of wisdom. And it's hard to see them unless you have the eyes to see them. And if we're walking around the world with a chip on our shoulder and letting the smallest failure bowl us over, we're not going to see the greater picture because we're so obsessed with what's happening right now to us. You know, and I think that's what's important about.
It's kind of a forest for the trees sort of thing, you know?
Yeah. You can't see the whole forest if you're in it and your view is blocked by the trees.
Yeah. And if you bring it on down, you don't see the trees for the leaves and so on and so on, right? So that holds true from the micro to the macro, you know?
Yeah, well, and I think it's important about taking an observer view, and that's where it's like taking that 30,000-foot view of a situation, and that's what I try to do as a dog trainer when I go into my client's house. I'm asking all these questions, and it's just like what you were saying earlier, right when we were first starting this conversation about we are kind of counselors because we uncover through our investigation process about trying to get to the bottom of this dog's behavior, what triggered it, where it started, how long it's been going on, what's been reinforcing it, that we uncover a lot of times you know, other aspects of life that need work as well.
Yeah. Well, it is very much, you brought it up earlier. People say, well, I work with dogs because I don't like people. And the truth is we're in the people business, whether you like it or not, we're in the people business. And so I think that's why it is so very important for people to understand that, right? To study human behavior and to study how to broach those subjects with people and learn to read their facial expressions, read their body language, and to sort of tap into some of those archetypical stories that will help them through, because everybody has one or two of them in their history. They've all seen Pinocchio or something. I don't know, right? They've all seen them. And so you find those things to help them tackle their dragons, because that's at the end of the day, that's what they're doing, is they're facing a dragon of some sort in their home. And if you face the dragon, you know, since we're in the Jordan Peterson realm, right? What does the dragon guard? Gold. It hoards the treasure. And you got to face that in order to get the damsel or the gold or whatever the treasure might be. And in our case, the treasure is a dog that behaves in our home, you know, or in their home.
A fulfilled relationship as well, you know, on both sides, an equal balance, fulfillment.
Yeah. And if you're not doing your due diligence to learn how to better communicate with people, you're going to find yourself struggling in this business, no matter how you slice it. You know, you got to be able to get through to them and help them face those dragons.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, but sometimes when you see this, you can make suggestions. Like I love that I a vivacious reader. I like to tell people to read these books that I read and that have helped me, and I tell them why they've helped me. And another one that I've read is The Seven Principles of Making Marriage Work by John Gottman, and that one is an amazing book, and I recommend that to everybody. Whoever's if you're married, you definitely can benefit from this book. I found out about it from Jordan. No. Jordan Max. No. Who's the guy? The Blink guy, not Jordan Maxwell.
Blink 182 guy.
No. Blink. Malcolm Gladwell. Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell is where I found out about this guy. He has a love lab here in Washington at the University of Washington, where they actually set up this apartment and they invite couples to come in, and they have this apartment wired up for video and sound, except for like in the bathroom and a couple of different areas. And in the 70s, they started this, and they've been running this for the last 3 decades, and they've gotten it down where they've observed these relationships, and they've gotten it to such a science that this guy can now watch a 5-minute conversation between a couple, and he can tell them within 95% certainty if they're going to be divorced.
Yeah.
And
I think it's interesting. Now, I haven't read it, but I'm curious to know if he can do that by turning the sound down.
Right. Oh, yeah, so, I wonder.
Yeah, because I don't remember who it was. It was maybe on one of Jordan Peterson's lectures, but they were talking about that, how some of the studies are turn the volume down and watch their behavior, and then see if you can discern what the conversation's about. Are they arguing? Are they laughing and getting along? Are they having a serious discussion? And it's interesting because if you pay close enough attention, you don't have to hear their words. You'll know exactly what's going on. I find that very fascinating.
Well, Chrissy just made up a point too. She says, I feel like going through my coaching classes has guided me to a better approach with evaluations and clients. And, I've hired business coaches myself, and they have been a very valuable resource for me. And in fact, maybe I'm going to reach out to him. I think I'm going to reach out to him and bring him on board one of these Bow Wow Bill live streams. Yeah. Just so he's a wonderful guy. And the insight that he has brought to me by giving me guidance, but it also puts me into that perspective of a client looking for help.
Right.
And that's the first thing, is that they need to ask for help. You could walk down the street, man, and I could pick out 5 or 6 dogs that need help easily. Right. We can see it because of the storm, right? The dog's just yanking but unsought diagnostics. If I walked up to that person and told them, hey, do this, do that, do this, then that would be met with animosity. They'd be like, who the hell are you, dude? Exactly. I love my dog. I'm, and it's like, it's a very, you have to wait to be asked. But once I'm asked, then here we go, buddy. And that's what we, as professionals, that's what we need to bring to the table. And even if this conversation is hard, and like I was saying earlier, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. I know it, but I got to say it anyway, because you have paid me and this is what I do. And I have to tell you the truth about what I see here. Okay. And, that's it. And so, and then I asked him, are you ready? Here we go. I'm going to give you some good news. The good news is, I know you love your dog. I could see that. That's obvious, but
right.
Start getting into
there's always a big but,
Yeah, but let's, we're over mother henning, or I don't know. I can't think of anything right now that is coming to mind. But it's you have to really think about and kind of how do I position this in a way that this person is going to receive it in a manner that is going to be constructive, but also to not over emphasize, or to just kind of leave it to be too.
Right. Sometimes the best thing is to say it and then shut up.
Yeah, right. That's it. And let's start working on some solutions here. Here's what we need to do, and then shut up, and then let it be, and then let the client too talk.
Right, because they're going to reveal to you what's going on. I think that's one of the skills that we I think generally as a profession, we don't necessarily have as well as we should is good, solid listening skills. I am incredibly guilty of waiting to talk. That's one of my biggest flaws is instead of listening is waiting to talk. And it's something that I have to struggle and work with, just like everybody has their things, right? And I think that's a hard one for us as a profession because again, so many of us go into it because we're not people. You know, I'm very people oriented. You know, that's from sales to whatever. You know, I think that's a struggle for a lot of folks. And also, I think it would be a good idea for younger trainers to take some sort of a sales class, right? So she mentioned her coaches and things of that nature, right? Whether it's a life coach or a softball coach or whatever, right? Coaches bring a lot of that, but I also think good sales training it would be very beneficial for the average trainer, right? Because ultimately, what you're doing is selling them on a new idea, a new practice, a tool, a new way of being. And if you can, as the saying goes, sell ice to an Eskimo, well, you'll do well.
Yeah. I wonder what my sales books, like I have some up here. Oh, right here. This one's one of my favorite books. Hey, let me see here. Customer satisfaction is worthless. Customer loyalty is priceless. I definitely recommend people. Jeffrey Gitomer is a book that I'll put it up in the comments here. But you're absolutely right, man. I am so thankful that I bartended and I was a waiter for so long and I miss it, dude. I love getting to know people so much I can hardly stand it. You know, just asking about them and just like people are amazing, man. And the things that make them that drive them every day and the life that they've lived and where they're from and their family and you know, there's so many things, but I'm so thankful that I have that skill through many years of waiting tables, you know, and just kind of judging a situation. Oh, this is a couple that are kind of fighting right now. I'm going to let them be. Or this is a romantic couple that, you know, the guy
and get the hell out.
Yeah, you know, or these guys might need a little bit more schmoozing. They want a more romantic. Or this guy might be a little lonely, or you know, this guy's having a hard time, and you know, or this guy's a jerk. You know, whatever it is.
There's a lot of people that will just rattle their glass because you're not there as their server, you're there as their servant, right? And I think that's, you know, I talk to a lot of young people, whether it's, you know, younger family members or high schoolers or whatever. I'm forever talking to young people and trying to give them wisdom or nuggets of, you know, little nuggets of information that might help them avoid some of the traps I've made, you know, or I fell into.
Borrowing scars.
Yeah, you know,
let them borrow some of your scars.
Exactly, right. Here's my scar, and here's how I got it, you know. But one of the things I recommend the most is to wait tables or 10 bar, one of the, you know, work in a restaurant out front for 1 year, right? Do it while you're in college. Do it between high school and college. Do it right after you get, I don't care, but somewhere between, you know, before you're, say, 25, serve food for 6 months to a year. You will learn so much about yourself, what you're capable of, people, what they're capable of, right? Because it's not an easy job, as you know, right? You're running constantly, you're sweating, you're having to deal with your alcoholic, ridiculous boss. Because I don't know any restaurant managers that don't have some sort of issue that they're dealing with. It seems like that profession
kind of goes with
breaks people down after so many years, right? So you do it and get out, right? but seriously though, I really think that that's one of those, because it's not like sales and it's not like retail. Retail's a hard one too. I think that's another good one.
I worked in retail for a little bit, but I couldn't stand that, man. I just couldn't. It was too boring, dude. Like that's
the drawback, right? Whereas serving, it's so dynamic.
Yep. Yeah. And it's moving, and you got the flow, and you know and you get busy, and I mean, and if you look at the dynamic of serving, like the busier the place is, the better service you're going to get. The more slow it is, that's when you get the worst service. So that people start goofing off and start getting out of that flow, and and it's an interesting dynamic. So we have totally agree. Was a waitress, bartender before being a dog trainer. Those people skills helped so much.
They really do.
I'm telling you, I babysat adults for years. That's what it is. Exactly well, that's what it is, dude. I broke it up a huge brawl in the back there. I've done a lot of stuff that, man, I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, wow, that was, interesting times to say the least. But
hard to deal with that kind of aggro,
Yeah, well, I mean, it changes people the way that alcohol can fuel that, and not like that, but you also see a sad part of it too, where people get a little addicted to this, or they need to numb some aspects of their life too. So there's
I saw a lot of that in my staff, right, or in my coworkers.
Yes,
as much or more than I saw it in my clients, right, or customers in that sense. And so again, it's another one of those great little pockets of people that you can learn all kinds of aspects about them and how they get to those things. And like you were saying earlier, their journey, what got them to where they are, because that's important. That'll tell us about what we need to do to move forward.
Oh, hairdresser is another good one. Tosh says that she was a barber hairdresser, a mainly counselor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another great one, right? Because you're standing there blowing and going all day, and what do you got to do? You got to talk to them. And some of those people, they don't want you to talk to them. Just cut my damn hair and let me get. And you got to learn to deal with those people, or it's never just right,
Yeah, it's a dynamic, and some people with the dog training, I'm just the help too, and that's okay. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, it's whatever it is. I just have to. It's my job to evaluate and assess the situation on my end as well, and to perform to the standards that are being expected of me, and not to get too cozy too. This is a professional relationship, and sometimes we are in a more intimate setting because we are coming into the house and into that family unit. And above and for first and foremost, we are there to enact change for the better for the family and that dog, and we can't forget that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we have to be aware of. It's not necessarily a topic that we generally go down. It's not something that I really don't hear it discussed much in the dog training world, but I think that's something that's important because you hear about it in other professions and so forth. We come in, and oftentimes we're a hero. Right. Mm-hmm. We've saved the day. We're the, wearing the white hat on the steed, and we've ridden in and saved the day. And that can create overwhelming feelings of connection and emotion, just like counselors, right? Clinical psychologists have to deal with that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I've had over the years a couple of those little incidents pop up where you have to immediately start to distance yourself very quickly. Whoa. I'm here to help you with your dog.
Yeah.
I'm not here for any of this other stuff, And I think that's something that we have to be aware of, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever. You said it. We're in an intimate setting with these people. And I think it makes it that much more important for us to be aware of that, just like we have to be aware of their personal problems that they're dealing with and how are we going to address that and so forth. I think that's something else that we have to be aware of, that as we come in as the savior, we can end up creating vibes that we don't want to create. And we have to learn how to deal with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just and be professional.
I meant to ask you this earlier, and the reason I'm asking is I was talking with a student, and I'm teaching her about being a dog trainer. And she was saying, "Hey, can you come and help out with this one?" I told him maybe you could come take a look. I said, "I don't come take a look at anything. If I'm coming, we're working. I don't do evaluations. I don't come take a look. And it seems that folks are about 50-50 on that. I'm just curious where you stand. Do you do evaluations?
I do evaluation. I want to know what's up with what their expectations are, and that's mainly what it is. But I'm working during that evaluation. I mean, it's not going to be, let me see, like it's an evaluation, but it's also, let's get to work. Let's discuss what we're doing here. I want to discuss your budget, what your expectations are, and and then to get a little history of what's going on here, and then also be there present to see that family unit. But then we're working. Absolutely. I mean, even that assessment includes, suggestions on, because sometimes I won't have the right tools, or I want to, if it's an older dog or something like that, and I need a help checkup on it, or a senior panel or something. Come here. And my dog's chewing up the rug as I'm talking to you.
You'd be having to shove them and snapping left and right.
Yeah, and that's it.
It should be better than that.
Yeah. But that's it. I want to, I mean, it is evaluation, but it is working. It is hands-on. I want that person to see
hands-on. Do you go out and do an evaluation?
Yes. I go hands-on. I want to be right there in their house. And that's what I tell them. When I meet you, I want to come to your space. I want to see it. We can work on my property later, but I want to kind of get, a view and tailor it to your specifications.
Yeah. But we need private stuff here. I don't bring anybody here for private lessons. I mean, if we just have to come here, that's what we'll do. But I've found that I'm best served going to them.
Yeah, seeing the dog in its own element.
They are. But the reason I ask about the evaluation, I do all that over the phone.
Oh yeah, I just don't have time. I mean, over the phone, I like to just be right there, and I'll chunk it away, and that's it. I schedule certain days for this, and then I chunk it away. I know exactly where they are, and sometimes I don't even want. I want to come to the situation blind sometimes. Otherwise,
I don't really need to know what the story is about the dog. In essence, I want to come in and see it just how it sits.
And see how, Chrissy was saying here earlier, yes, and which program fits them, and seeing the dog in its own element, and seeing how they handle me just coming up to the door, bang, 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 right. and just seeing how they react, what the same cycle is, so I can view it, and then I can get a good view before we even start talking. I already have a good idea of what's going on. And then we'll sit down, and then I'll ask a few more questions, kind of thin slice their situation, and then see what plan might work best for them. And then we get started, And then also, Chad Mackin, who I will be having on, I talked to him earlier today too. He's going to come on. So is Mark Goldberg. But Chad said something that I really like. He said that, my job isn't to tell you the dog you need. You as a client tell me the dog you want, and I help you get there as quick as possis
Right. So I'm your doggy Sherpa, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to learn? Let's go down that road. Right.
That's right.
For me, the evaluations are more about the owners,
Okay.
Frankly, I don't care what's like what you're talking about. When I get to the home, that's exactly what we're doing, right? I want to I tell them, don't do anything special. When I come,
do everything the same.
Your normal day, unless he's going to attack me. And if he's going to attack me,
they get a leash on him. That's what I tell them.
Fight your dog in your 4-year-old. But outside of that, for me, the evaluation is really more about getting to know them, right? When they're on the phone, if they say, here's my problem, this is what my dog is doing, can you help me? Right. Well, they're very straightforward, analytical, right? They're that Sheldon type. You know what I mean? If they start saying, well, I have this dog and we got him at a shelter 4 years ago, and here's what happened. Did you know he really loves doing it. So when I talk to them, everything I do is going to be very story oriented, right? Wow. And so if they're an analytical type, or if we're talking and they're going down this little path, and now they're over here, and now they're back over here, and now they're back over there, then I know, okay, well, now I know why your dog doesn't listen to you. Or now I know why your dog is confused. You're confused, And so for me, the evaluation has always been about understanding who they are, so that I can go in there and talk to them in a way that makes sense to them, you know.
Yeah.
Because the dogs, as you know, Bill, the dogs are the easy part. You know,
Yeah, totally.
They come around quickly. I was doing a group class yesterday, and my student came to the class because she needs to start participating in those things, and handed her a dog, and I just started talking. This dog had zero training, none, right? Just
Green dog.
drags on the leash and very friendly, but no training. And she takes the leash and gets her cookies and gets her clicker. And before you know it, the dog's just doing all kinds of stuff around the gym, you know. He's not the problem. You know what I mean? He's easy. She's not that skilled. You know, she's been doing this less than a year. But just like that dog started listening and following and doing and getting into a heel position and all those things very, very quickly. So the dogs tend to be the easiest part of the equation.
I agree.
And so for me, it's learning who they are, what kind of, you know, in sales, we talked about them as personality types, right? Of course, you know, you've got the A type, B type, and so forth, right? And then how do you pitch A type and B type and so forth? So that's kind of the way I approach it. I've always been curious because I know some people, they'll go and spend an hour with them before they even talk about a lesson program and money and things like that. And if I'm there an hour, they just got one hell of a lesson.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to be there an hour. So I would
I tell them, you know, make sure that everybody is taking notes. I tell them during the time that I'm there, I need you to start writing down your questions now.
Right.
And so we make sure that we get everything addressed. I want to get everything out. I want you. And that's what I tell my clients. Like, when you know the why, when you understand the why behind what we're doing, that gives you all the power that you need. And that's what my job is to instill and to make you understand the why we're doing what we're doing, why, what's going to happen with the dog, what to look for in the dog as feedback. And then also, you know, keeping it up and explaining how the work is going to be most effectively learned and retained. And then we go forward, you know, and that's it. But it's also, I let them know, hey, look, this isn't easy. It's a process, and you're going to have bad days. The dog's going to have bad days, but we keep on working through it. It's just like what you were saying about working through the knife. You know, there's sometimes that you're going to get bit or maybe get stung or burned, you know, but you keep your eye on the big prize, and which is the canvas, that Tranquil canvas, which is a nice calm dog and a nice relationship. And a lot of times I have to get into that client's head too, like, look, this is where we're headed. I need you to kind of visualize this. I need you to know that it's possible, for one. And that's the other thing. When I come into the house and they see the dog, and like we were saying earlier, if you didn't realize that this was possible with this animal, but now you do realize that it's possible. And now that you do realize it, let's take action to make it so you can do the exact same things that I'm doing with this animal. I know you can. Right. And that's why I'm here, to work through this with you. Yeah. And I look forward to being on the other side where I don't ever hear from you again. No offense. That's what I tell them. I'm like, I can't wait to never hear from you again.
I would rather you just call me because you need some boarding or
exactly.
some daycare. Don't call me because, you know, I want you to call me if you have a problem, but my goal is to put myself out of your business in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That's what we want to do as trainers, is just kind of be, you know, ancillary services, not the rehab always. And I also see that with people when they choose their next dog. It is like, man, you just got yourself a situation that you just got out of. And it's interesting to me, you know, but whatever. I mean, it's their path, and I'm there to help them through it. It's.
I think you're that little phrase right there. Whatever, it's your path. That is something that we need to, not you and I, but we as an industry need to learn more readily. I see in my social media feeds all the time, and I understand venting. Okay, I understand venting, but I see so often how people think their clients are stupid or whatever, and that just it irks me,
Me too, man. Why? I
because
mean,
they're not stupid. They're not, just because
no,
they live with their dog in a different way than we do. We have to remember that we're the oddballs. For the most part, as trainers, we're the weirdos. We live with our dogs in ways that most people never will. They get their dogs and they sit on the couch and have bonbons and feed them from the table, and they sleep in the bed. And I can't beat them up for that. I have to show them how to do those things they want in a more healthy way.
Yeah.
You want them to sleep in the bed? Fine. I'm not going to scold you for it. Mine sleep in my bed. But when I tell them to move, they get their ass out of the way.
Yeah.
And you can have that too, I feed mine off my fork, keeps my father from coming over and eating, but.
Well, my older dogs too, man. I mean, you should see him. My boy is 14 years old, and I mean, I have little special treats for him all the time that I save for him, and I get him cheeseburgers, and like, there's just, because he's my right-hand man for so many years, that this is my time to give back. And that's the other aspect of this too, is that when he does, and when his time comes, that's my job, after so much that he has given me, to step up and end his suffering. And that's the other aspect of this job that doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good, but it's something that I take pride in helping my clients work through, is saying goodbye to their friends. And
I think that's an aspect that a lot of trainers don't realize that's what we do. I'll talk to trainers or even pet sitters and other people, and we'll have that conversation. Look, it is a tragic game that we play. It is. I talked to a client today, and he says, I just wanted to let you know what was going on. He had a Great Dane. He had two of them. I worked with them years ago. Didn't realize how many years ago though, right? He sends me this message, says, hey, she has a mass on her, hip, and we had some tests done. It's cancerous. We're waiting to see what our next steps are, blah, 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 blah. And he says, yeah, Maddie's 13 and Addie is 10 and a half or 12 or however old she was. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but these are old, ancient Great Danes. I mean, to be 13 years old and to be 140-pound Great Dane, that's really
crazy. Yeah.
But that's one of those things that here they are, some 7 or 8 years later, we still have a connection, and I'm still concerned about what happens to that dog. And if he sends me a thing next week and says, oh my God, things took a turn for the worse and she died, I am going to be devastated. It's going to break my heart. And that's, I think, one of the things that, if you're going to go into this profession, you have to be aware of that. Ours is a tragic game. It can be,
it taxes your heart, man. It taxes your heart, and that's you
have this extreme joy.
Yeah,
you have this extreme sorrow. But it is also part of what makes this job so fulfilling. Because we're actually touching and involved with these people's lives. And again, that makes our job special and unique, and it means that we should honor it and do the best damn job we can for these people, because they're suffering. When they call us, they don't call us because they're happy about their dog. 9 times out of 10, they call you because they're pissed off, scared, something.
And you're not the only one they've called too. A lot of times, they're desperate. They're wanting help, and they're looking for those answers, and it's our job to provide it, and in a professional way, but also the truth.
Yeah. But we've come back around to that 2 or 3 times. You got to tell the truth.
Yeah, the truth is one of the most important things in life. I believe so. Well, Brad, I think that we've been chatting for quite a while, brother. I loved it. What do you think?
Yeah. Hell, I'll keep going a little more if you wanted to. But yeah, we've been chatting a while. That's a good thing, man. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and this will be available, to watch later. And if you're watching this after the fact, if you're not watching us live, then Brad, if you want to get a hold of Brad, he's at alabamadogtrainer.com.
Yeah.
And I'll have to find, I'll put your Facebook page. Hold on, let me put that in.
And that's it's Alabama Dog Trainer or something. It's Brad it's facebook.com/Alabama Dog Trainer or something. I don't know how that Facebook stuff works. I'm not techie.
Yeah,
I can log on and I can post. That's it. I don't know what my handle is. I don't know.
I'll find out. Let's see. All about Alabama Dog.
Hashtag is. That was a pound sign when I was a kid. It was the pound symbol on the phone.
The pound on your phone.
That is.
There you go. And you were a presenter at the IACP conference. Were you in?
A couple of years ago, it was in St. Louis.
Okay.
Not this past St. Louis, but the St. Louis prior.
Well, I like to plug the IACP too. IACP is a wonderful organization, canineprofessionals.com. Here, I'll put that on the screen. Brad is a member, and we have gone to various events together. Yeah, canineprofessionals.com. There's that. And I'm going to put down in the comments here a link to Brad's page on Facebook. So make sure that you guys run over there and give him a like. And yeah, Brad, thank you very much for joining me today, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Bill.
Yeah, you're a good friend, and look forward to hanging out with you again. And Chrissy says, well, Alabama, Florida, Georgia border area. Is that, what was that? Well, Alabama, Florida, Georgia border area. She must be on Georgia border area. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not seeing that one.
I'll put it on the screen there for you. And Chrissy, well, Alabama, Florida, Georgia border.
Well, we're pretty close. I was actually down in Dothan just last weekend. I was down there for a Scottish festival. Had me kilt on, and had me some scotch. It was lovely.
Yeah, man. I look forward to working and making some glass for you and having one of your knives. And Chrissy says going to follow you and look you up when I'm there. Yeah, Brad is a great guy, and she's moving there.
Oh, so, fantastic.
Awesome, Brad. Well, we'll be in touch, brother. Be good.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.